And it was only with the passage of the years and more research when I started to realize the nature of this reality that we're experiencing that made sense in how this structure is playing out. What the system has done is to keep from us the nature of the reality we're experiencing and the nature of who we are in life itself. And in doing so, it has kept us completely in the dark about what's actually happening around us. The knowledge that's passed across the top levels of the secret society network through these bloodline families, the most important part of that knowledge is the knowledge of reality itself. For instance, we think as we look around here that we're seeing everything that exists within this room. But in fact, we're only seeing a frequency range, a very tiny one, called visible light. Anything outside of that, we can't decode, therefore we can't see. But just like radio stations share the same space without interfering with each other, so other worlds, other dimensions, other realms of reality, if you like, share the same space without interfering with each other. However, just as with radio, if you've got two stations that are very close on the dial, then one will be the dominant one, but another one, you'll get what we call interference from it. It's the same with these various realities that share the same space. It's what mainstream science calls parallel universes. Just outside of the frequency range of visible light, there are entities that are anything but human who have been manipulating this reality, this world, for eons. And because they are working on, operating on a frequency that's different to ours, they have to manipulate our world through conduits, and interfaces. For instance, when you see scientists in a laboratory, they want to work with material that's very dangerous. So the material will be in a big glass tank, and they will be outside the tank, and they'll put on those gloves, and they can work from outside the tank into the tank and do what they have to do. It's very, very similar in theme to what these Illuminati bloodlines have been bred for. They are bred to be the vehicles within visible light, this world that we experience, of these entities. And if you go back and you look at religious beliefs, etc., of the ancients, in the accounts of the ancients, these entities, which go under different names, some people call them the serpent race, some people call them demonic. In the Islamic culture, they call them jinns, all different names, but the same entities. The bloodlines are interbreeding incessantly and have been right back to ancient Babylon and Sumer and Egypt, etc., and beyond, because they are holding a certain genetic code which allows the possession, another ancient common theme from as far back as you can track right to today, a genetic code which allows these entities to possess these particular bloodline families within the reality that we experience, and these families are therefore simply vehicles of these demonic entities. You research any of these families, be it the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, Greenspan, Alan Greenspan, any of these people, you will go eventually into black magic, blood-drinking human sacrifice rituals where they make sacrifices to the gods. And these gods are these entities which feed off human energy and feed off human blood too. So people accept, yes, long ago people used to use human sacrifice to the gods, yes, and all the rest of it. And they think, oh no, we're kind of civilized now. Well, some of us are, but these bloodlines are not, and they're just continuing to do today covertly what they were openly doing in the past. And they are interacting with these entities all the time in their rituals. That's why they do all these rituals. That's why they drink the blood. And ultimately, they are possessed by these entities. And this brings about a simple situation. You've got the entities, let's call them demonic entities for want of a word. They're operating just outside of this visible light reality that we experience. they use the bloodline families as their vehicle to manipulate this reality. They take over their mental, what passes for their emotional processes, their physical processes. And what that means is, when these bloodline families go into positions of power, what we're actually doing is seeing these entities go into those positions of power. And so the secret society network is there to manipulate these bloodline families and their agents into the positions that dictate society and the direction it goes and all the rest of it. And because we can only decode their visible light level, we see the human level. We see people under different names called Rockefeller and Rothschild and Bush and Obama and all the rest of it. But if we could see beyond visible light just a little bit, and some people can, you would see overshadowing these people anything but a human entity. And it's these entities that have passed through what we call history, and they have been the cement, the guiding force that has brought this conspiracy through to the present day. Because people have asked me in the past, quite rightly, I understand it, why would someone give their life to this conspiracy, this global takeover, in 1500 or 1650 or 1820, when they knew they were never going to be around to actually see it happen, which is what they're trying to do now, playing the cards they're playing now? The answer to that is they were just vehicles. These entities are the common force passing through history, which has led this conspiracy to where it is today.
And the idea is to so tie up the world that they make everywhere in the world dependent on everywhere else in the world, which means that no one has control over their own destiny. It's all in the hands of other people and situations that they have no control over. That's the idea. People talk about the prison planet. The prison planet is the human mind in prison. That's what it is. But if you keep going, because you want to know the origin of this, then you go out of this reality called visible light. You go out of this into other levels of reality.
If you go to a stage hypnotist show, what do you see? You see stooges on the stage, and then you see the hypnotist, and he goes along and he uses his techniques to implant a belief in reality into the stooges. He might tell them there's an elephant in the audience. He might tell them that the woman next to the person is naked. And when you start to understand how we create reality and decode reality, you can see how simple this is. The brain is decoding reality like a computer decodes information and puts it on the screen. However, if you program the computer to read the information in a certain way, then it will. And in the same way, if you can program the human brain to read information in a certain way, then it will. Example, in a hypnotist stage show, I've seen people being given a potato and being implanted with the belief that it's an apple. Now, when they eat that, normally they would reel back a raw potato, but they don't, because the electrical signals carrying the taste of that potato go to the brain and normally would be decoded as a potato. Because of the implanted belief it's an apple, it decodes that as an apple, and they actually taste an apple. I've seen people in a hypnotist stage show being told that when a certain code is given, they're going to smell something horrible. And he gives the code, and the line of them go, "Oh my God!" This is how it's possible. Now you take that onto the collective level, and you think that when we're watching television, our brainwaves go into the same brainwave state as they do in a hypnotic trance. And what that does is open the mind, open the psyche to programming from, and what do we call those things between the adverts? What do they call them? Programs, television programs. It's television programming. So we think of a hypnotist programming people in a stage show, but the media, not least through television, is constantly programming the human psyche with a sense of itself, a sense of the world, a sense of what's happening in the world, a sense of what to think about people like politicians and Obama, what to think about the way the system works. If we succumb to that program, and vast numbers of programming, and vast numbers of people do, then we're simply going to go through robotically, just like the stooges on a stage hypnotist show, and we're going to react to the world, and we're going to behave in a way that we've been programmed to behave in. And this programming is 24/7. And another aspect of this program we laughingly call education. If you were sitting around a table, I don't know, a century or so ago, and you said, right, okay, we want to turn out children as the adults we want them to be, so they're easily controllable, they're easily manipulatable, and they'll see the world and themselves the way we want them to see it. Now, any ideas around the table how we could do this? Someone might say, well, I'm not sure they'll have this, but I tell you what would be perfect. We take the children from their parents at a very, very early age, and throughout their formative years, up through school and college and university, we have control of what goes into their heads, into their minds, like at least 5 days a week, most days of the year. That would be perfect, because we turn out almost everyone to see the world the way we wanted to see it. Well, that's exactly what they've done. And now we're having Obama talking about having American children at school for longer and all the rest of it. And it's all part of the process of, A, giving the children more time under the state's control and influence than the parents, and also having more time to program the young people to see the world and become the adults that they want them to be. There's one area that's very important to understand in how people apparently come out of nowhere to positions of power and influence. Like they say, or lots of people believe, that Obama came out of nowhere. He was prepared for a very long time to do what he's doing now. These people do not do ad lib. They don't do make it up as you go along. It's all projected a long way forward. And it's also extraordinary the number of people, even in the apparently lower positions of power and influence within the church, within entertainment, etc., who turn up as expressions of this bloodline elite. And I understood this over the years, having met people who've been on the inside. I'll give you one example. I communicated with a guy who lives in America now, living under another name, but he was an unofficial Rothschild. His father was the guy who started the Rothschild wine estates in France. And he told me how the Rothschilds and these bloodline families not only interbreed with many different women to produce the bloodline, but they actually have sperm banks, because the sperm bank holds the genetic code that they operate on. And part of that genetic code is it's had deleted from it any feeling of empathy. Very, very important point. These people do not have the ability to empathize with the consequences for others of their actions. So 3,000 dead on 9/11, well, there's no emotional consequence at all, because that ability to empathize, which is a fail-safe mechanism of human behavior, has been deleted from the genetic structure, purposely. But this man, who was an unofficial Rothschild, one of thousands and thousands, this guy was telling me, who were produced by the breeding programs and the artificial breeding programs, was designated a specific role, and that was to have a position within the Christian church, even though they were all practicing Satanists, and undermine it and dictate its direction from within. Because they produce these children, and they bring them up under different names, you will not have a situation where every president's a Rockefeller, where every prime minister is a Rothschild. You get the picture. Because they come through different names. They're called Clinton, they're called Bush, they're called Obama, etc. But forget the name. the genetic structure, the bloodline is the same. And this bloodline filters down, not just at the from the high positions, but right out into mainstream society. Why do some artists who have a certain amount of talent, some not very much, why do they get picked up by the corporations to become these big influencers of young people and other people through the entertainment and the music industry, and others with incredible talent never get off the ground? It's because they are chosen. The scale and fine detail in which these opinion formers right across society, from entertainment, media, through to politics, etc., are actually brought through from childhood to do those things is absolutely incredible. And when the lid really comes off this, and it's coming off, then people are going to look at the world they've been living in and see just, even if people now think, yes, it's a controlled world, whoa, wait till you see the level of control. And they have their people all over the place in all these different institutions, religions, etc., to push society in the desired direction.
We left the body. Everything from the beginning, my birth, my ancestors, my children, my wife, everything comes together simultaneously. I saw everything about me and about everyone who was around me. I saw everything they were thinking now, what they thought then, what was happening before, what was happening now. There is no time, there is no sequence of events, no such thing as limitation of distance, of period, of time, of place. I could be anywhere I wanted to be simultaneously. That is who we are. And that is what they want to keep from us, so that we will serve the control system, because they got no chance when we realize that's who we are.
You know, people talk about the human mind as if it's like the arbiter of human awareness and perception. It isn't. This is why it's so important to get across, and for people to realize what the nature of this reality is that we're experiencing. This is quite provably, when you look at the science, it's obvious. We live in a virtual reality universe. It's like a three-dimensional holographic version of the internet. If you go on the internet in Australia or South Africa or South America or Los Angeles, you're all accessing the same collective reality through the computer. Well, we, in our prime state, are consciousness, not form, but awareness. And this awareness experiences this tiny frequency range we call this world, just a tiny frequency range called visible light, through a interface called body-mind. If I want to go on the internet, I can't just go on the internet. I have to have a conduit to go on the internet, a computer. And even then, I don't go on the internet. The computer does. I observe the internet through the computer. This is what consciousness, awareness, the real eternal self that these religious teachings talk about, etc., and non-religious teachings too, talk about. This eternal self. Some people call it soul, whatever you want to call it. And if you hold that awareness to that higher level of self, you're in this world, if you like, physically and experiencing it, but your point of observation is outside of this manipulated reality. And through the lens of body-mind, you can see things that the body-mind in this world and of it cannot see. And the more the system, when you study it, from cradle to grave, be it education, media, all these things, they're all, even religion to a large extent, is designed to pull our focus of attention into body-mind. It's the same. A very good analogy is you're on the internet, and suddenly the computer takes control of what you think of the internet, where you go on the internet, and the decisions you make. And the more entrapped you are in mind-body perception, i.e. the five senses, and look at society, it's all about pulling us into the five senses. Look at this, listen to this, taste this, feel this, all trying to hold us in the five senses. The more entrapped you are, the longer it takes, the more powerful the transformation has to be for you to wake up open your mind and go to higher levels of your awareness. What has been happening, I've seen this all over the world, I've been to 50 countries, it's happening everywhere over the last 20 years, is more and more people are going through this process, they call it transformation, whatever, where they open their mind and they let their true self consciousness in. Now consciousness is looking from this perspective, mind's looking from here, and that's why they want to keep us entrapped in mind-body perception, because we're looking here, we can see one dot, maybe two dots at a time. We can't connect the dots and see what's going on. Once you become conscious beyond body-mind, suddenly, whoo, I can see how it fits together now. I've come across people only recently who've gone from this to this in literally weeks.